I'm Emily. Welcome to Brain Built Different, where we explore how autism, ADHD, and different ways of thinking really work. Because when you understand your brain, life starts making a lot more sense. Imagine you're watching a WWE Premium Live event. The two wrestlers have been telling a story for 20 minutes. One of them has been working on the other wrestler's knee throughout the match. The commentators keep mentioning it, and every time he goes for a move, he grabs his knee in pain. You can tell it's going to matter later. Now, the match reaches its climax. The crowd is on its feet. One wrestler lifts the other onto his shoulders, and you know his finisher is coming. Without even realizing it, your brain starts making predictions. Will he hit the finisher? Will it be a false finish? Will there be a run-in? Will there be a surprise return? You don't know what's going to happen, but your brain is already trying to work it out. Now imagine somebody pauses the television just before the finisher. Almost immediately, your mind starts filling in the gaps. I bet he'll reverse it. Maybe somebody's music is about to hit. He's definitely kicking out. You didn't decide to think those things. Your brain did it automatically. That's because one of the brain's most important jobs is to predict what is going to happen next. Scientists now believe that your brain spends much of its time making predictions about the future. Every second of every day, it compares what it expected to happen with what actually happened, and when its prediction is wrong, it updates itself and gets a little better at understanding the world. You rarely notice this happening because it is so fast, but it affects almost everything you do. Many people imagine the brain as a giant computer that waits for information before making decisions. But it isn't. A better way to think about it is as a prediction machine. Every second of every day, your brain is asking questions like, what is that person going to say next? Where is that car likely to go? What will happen if I press this button? How is this conversation going to end? The better your brain becomes at making predictions, the less effort life requires. Imagine if every time you walked upstairs, you had to think carefully about where to put each foot. Walking would be exhausting. Instead, your brain predicts where the next step will be, and most of the time it gets it right. Now let's think about conversations. Suppose someone asks you, "What happened at school today?" Before you've even opened your mouth, your brain has already started organizing your answer. Perhaps you'll begin with registration, then maths, then something funny that the drama teacher said, then the science experiment that nearly went wrong. In your mind, the conversation already has a structure. You haven't spoken yet, but your brain has. It has built a plan. For many people, that plan is flexible. If someone interrupts and asks, "Wait, what happened at lunchtime?" they can usually answer the question and then return to the rest of the story, changing their prediction without too much difficulty. For some people with ADHD and autistic traits, however, the plan feels much more important. The brain has invested real effort in building the sequence, so when someone suddenly changes it, it doesn't simply feel like a different question. It feels as though someone has taken apart something that was carefully organized. Imagine reading a detective novel. You're halfway through when someone walks into the room and says, "Don't bother reading the rest, just tell me who did it." You probably could, but you wouldn't want to, because the ending only makes sense once you've understood everything that came before. Your brain likes stories because stories explain why things happened. Now imagine somebody interrupts you halfway through telling your own story. To them, they're simply asking a question. To your brain, they're removing pages from the middle of the book. That's why the frustration feels so real. Your brain is trying to protect the structure it has already built. Here's something that took scientists a long time to understand. When people communicate, they are often trying to solve completely different problems. You may be trying to answer the question thoroughly, while the other person may simply want the shortest possible answer. Neither approach is wrong. They're just different. Imagine your friend asks, "What time is the film?" There are two possible answers. Version A is simply, "It starts at 7:30. Version B is, "Well, originally it was going to start at 7, but then they changed it because the cinema had a problem with one of the projectors. We nearly booked the earlier showing, but Dad couldn't finish work in time, and then..." everything in version B might be true, yet none of it answers the question. One of the biggest communication skills you can develop is learning to recognize what information the other person actually needs. Not everything you know, just what helps them. That doesn't mean the extra details are unimportant, it simply means they can come later. This is important. Nothing in this video means your brain is bad. In fact, the ability to build detailed stories is often a strength. It helps people become excellent teachers, writers, engineers, historians, detectives, and scientists. The challenge is recognizing that not every conversation needs the whole story. Sometimes people need the map, and sometimes they only need the destination. Learning the difference is one of the most useful communication skills you will ever develop, and like any skill, it improves with practice. Over the next week, every time somebody asks you a question, silently ask yourself one more question before answering. What information are they actually looking for? Then try giving them the shortest answer that still answers their question. If they want more detail, they'll ask. You aren't hiding information, and you aren't being rude, you're simply making it easier for other people to follow your thinking. You might be surprised by how often conversations become calmer, shorter, and more enjoyable for everyone involved.